Welcome, everybody. I think we're all now entering the room. Is that correct? Yes, great. So, welcome, everybody, to this launch of the Innate Motion podcast uh, called Business in the Age of Empathy. And I want to thank everybody for coming here to listen. And also want to welcome our guests, Joyce Reinhold, CEO of Innate Motion, Femke van Loon, Chief Growth Officer at Innate Motion, and Christophe Falconier, Chairman at Innate Motion. And it's great to talk to you again after having recorded this podcast with you, with Fairtrade, with Christoph, Live Kindly with Femke, and Brands on a Mission with Joystree. And today, for everybody that is here listening and watching, we just want to give you a bit of an introduction about what the podcast is about, what the ideas, key ideas are that we're going to be dealing with that you will learn from, and just give you a glimpse of the different episodes. So maybe just start off by one. Joyshri, maybe you could tell us a bit about what stuck with you the most after your conversation with Miriam and Brands on a Mission.
Yes, thank you, Shad. Hello to everyone. I'm happy that you're joining us today and happy to being together with you. As you know, we've named the series Business in the Age of Empathy. And in my conversation with Miriam around Brands on a Mission, this was one of the key factors that touched me most. So when she was talking about Lifebuoy and how she was creating this social mission brand within Unilever, she had many diverse stakeholders within different ecosystems to deal with. So there were the public health authorities, there were the NGOs, there was Unilever as a business. And at first sight, it didn't seem that these diverse stakeholders can work together towards a common goal and towards a common ambition. So her stories of how did she deal with the fact that some of them felt she's being a little bit of a traitor if she's going to the business side. Is she really true to humanity and the goodness that she wants to bring to the world? I thought was very, very intriguing, and how you can unite people by stepping into each other's shoes, but by also creating change together with the understanding and the notion that we need more than just us to bring the change to the world, and you need the diversity of people.
Yeah, so I like that very true. And I like that very much that also the interaction between you and Miriam, who both brought out different aspects of that connection part, and with you very explicitly bringing out the idea of empathy and how those two work together was very interesting. Femke, maybe you can tell us a bit about what stuck with you the most after your conversation with Liv Kindly.
Yes, sure. So thank you, Shad, and also Joycery, and also from my side, a warm welcome to everyone. I've seen a lot of people, friends, and fellow travelers have signed up for this today, so that's amazing. Um, from my conversation with Emily Closter is a global director at Live Kindly, so she works across the brands. Um, what stuck the most with me is how Emily is really in person the change she wants to see in the world. So she talked about her story as a change maker, as a front runner in the movement to use business as a force for good at various stages of her career, and about how she now finds herself really in her mission at the Live Kindly company, because she is in her own life also fueling the vegan revolution. So I love this idea of, her being the change she wants to see in the world. And then another amazing thing she talks about is how she's then able, someone told me a metaphor today and I thought it was beautiful, how she's able then to walk in those shoes, but then also to take off her own shoes and walk in the shoes of someone else. So she also talks about how, joining this vegan movement is very different for diverse people in the world, and how important it is to make sure that we develop solutions that are there for everyone, where everybody can find his own change. So I thought that was a really inspiring part, and I thank Emily a lot for the conversation, and you, of course, too.
Yeah, and you of course as well. I think what I really liked about the conversation with Emily was also, as you said, also a very personal story of her own
Exactly.
road to eating more plant-based, and I think it's very recognizable for a lot of us who want to eat more healthy, sustainable, and these all kinds of reasons, but it just isn't that easy, or it
Mm,
isn't that accessible, or isn't that yeah, easy. So what I really like about Live Candy as well is, I mean, they really have a goal which is kind of activistic. They want to turn the food production or food consumption to more plant based, but the way they approach it is to actually make the choice for people easier, to make
right.
help people eat what they like and like what they eat, like, which is the motto, which works really great. Christoph, um, you and I and Molly Harris Olsen and Nicolas Lambert talked about supply chains, fair trade, and what it actually means to make trade fair. So maybe you can tell us a bit about what stuck with you after that conversation the most.
Okay. Well, first, also, I would like to welcome everyone. It's great to be here. And what stuck with me the most is actually very simple: the amazing people that actually work for fair trade. So I was totally blown away with Molly and Nicola, and the humbleness, and um, how sometimes they empathize too little with themselves, and how even they, with such a noble purpose, very often get caught in system talk and stakeholder talk, and miss the human sense of why they're doing, and therefore underestimate even their potential to bring change and continue to change. Um, so the danger of thinking of themselves as already there, and where the rest of the people have to catch up, was for me present. And yet the humbleness of them saying, look, we want to take on a much bigger mission of, normalizing social justice, and then turn it into business solutions like the supply chain. The realizations that human chains are stronger than supply chains, and that became very apparent. So humbling and inspirational talk from both Molly and Nicholas.
Yeah, and that conversation, the idea of relating as humans to humans instead of as suppliers to producers or suppliers to consumers was a very integral part of the conversation, and that kind of also immediately helps to shift the way you look at the interactions you're having while doing business, which was interesting. One of the reasons we started this podcast, which we've been working on a few months now, was to bring to light what is already being done in the space of regenerative economy. So there is this, um, in Dutch we say stip on the horizon, so this dot on the horizon that we want to go to, but it's not that nothing is happening. There's a lot of people making big steps towards such a economy, and what is happening at this moment. And when we set out on creating this podcast, I myself was also kind of reconsidering this narrative of progress, because we have this idea that we have made a lot of progress in the modern world, which is usually is envisioned as industrialization, as urbanization, as larger scales, as GDP growth, And I mean, it's very clear that business, and whether you believe because business leaders are immoral or just because they are providing services to consumers, is kind of a sustainable. We extract extract energy from earth, we extract value from people, and then we put it back somewhere else for a profit, mostly creating a disbalance. And this idea is not very controversial anymore. Um, um, we kind of already know, a lot of people, that our modern lifestyle, one of the byproducts at least, is unsustainability. But the question I had myself was whether business necessarily leads to such an outcome when it becomes a global endeavor. So, like, should we actually give up on global business if we not want to profit at the detriment of others? And speaking with these people, which were very inspiring, so like Mary Harris Olsen, CEO of Fairtrade Australia New Zealand, Nicolas Lambert, CEO of Fairtrade Belgium, Miriam Sidibe, best-selling author and former chief social mission officer, Emily, marketing director at this amazing collective of people trying to change the way we eat. I was kind of hoping to understand how exactly business can be a force for good. Like, so what parts of mechanisms, supply chains, and etc. we would need to change. But in these conversations, and you three as well, what was interesting was that the how was not the first thing talked about. We didn't jump everybody was much more interested in talking about internal mental changes. So, how do we relate to each other, as opposed to external physical changes? Talking about how our shared vision needs to change, what being human means, what success means, and what our place in the world means before even dealing with the question of how and business and supply chains and these kind of things. And what kept coming back was this notion to relate to each other in doing business as human to human instead of as competitors. And this notion that is neatly summarized by this need for empathy, which is also the title, Business in the Age of Empathy. Um, so, Joshua, maybe you can hit off with kind of elaborating on this idea of empathy and business in the age of empathy, and the relationship between the how and the why, and all these kinds of things.
Yes, I'll give it a try. So, usually when you're talking about empathy, I don't think it's a often used word in the word in the world of business, right? Because um, say in the old days of business where you need to generate profit, it is a lot about performance. You have a lot of masculine values. Whereas now, if we are moving into the future of a more regenerative business, we are seeing that the feminine values need to be nurtured a lot more. And one of the key feminine values is empathy, right? So if we have the ability within us to relate people to people and to step into each other's shoes, there's so much more that we can do together to bring upon those changes that are so necessary if we want to keep a world sustainable and if we want to create a sustainable future. I think the shift or the paradigm shift that needs to come and that I see even more people going through is actually understanding that empathy is not a soft skill. It is an essential skill within the business world that we can train. And we are not either born with or without empathy. It's a skill that we can basically learn to adapt. And if you have that starting point, it also taps into your personal purpose. I mean, why are we going to work every day for so many hours, right? We want to create a positive impact for ourselves and for the people around us. And to me, having empathy also connects to that personal purposefulness, that if it's aligned to the purpose of a brand or an organization, becomes so much stronger and a driving force or the unlock of good business outcome.
Mm. this was one of the things that also came back in our conversation, was that empathy also does not mean, so there's this idea of a trade-off between being competitive and being empathic, and those that's an I would say an outdated idea, that you would be less competitive if you are also empathic. And that is, I think, definitely one of the shifts that would need to change for us to go further into a regenerative economy.
Absolutely. And if I might add another thing, I mean, if we're talking about the feminine values that obviously men can also portray and live, right? So it's not about emancipation here. Then next to empathy, we need to embrace our own shared vulnerability, right? Because we are all exposed to this world or planet that might be failing. And it's that we need to rise together. And the other aspect to me that is really important is diversity and inclusion. We need the many talents and different backgrounds to bring upon the changes and find the solutions that we need. And all of these things are being non-judgmental, more sensing each other and understanding at the core what it is that we need to do to rally us around a shared vision and purpose.
Great, thank you. Um, all of these notions are much more elaborated in the conversation with Joyce and Miriam, um, in Brands on a Mission Meets Humans on a Mission, the podcast. Um, Femke, could you tell us a bit more about your conversation with Emily in notion to the empathy part?
Yes, so we in the conversation we discussed how important it is to uncover a shared purpose of a community of people working on a brand, right? Because actually what we are using brands for and different propositions for in a company is very much to what we talked about, relate more to each other, because diverse communities, also diverse cultures, may have different expectations, right? So we spoke about when you want to bring a vegan revolution to the world and convince many people to eat more plant-based, you can't go with the same package to everybody in the world. I mean, just think about how people in China have a completely different food culture as a start point. If we go in with, you know, where we come from, the Netherlands or Europe, it's not gonna resonate, right? So we spoke about that, about how, you know, maybe young people who step into this revolution want to be a bit more progressive and break rules and step into fusion food or different inspirations, and how some people actually want to come with the change because of a more mindful approach today, because they're becoming more conscious, but actually they would love to stick to the tradition and the beautiful culture that meat brings from their childhood, right? So there's very different ways people come, and we discussed that how empathy can be really the unlock for getting the many to embrace the change.
Yeah, and empathy was in this conversation also a way to, I mean, empathy can't exist without understanding each other, right? So so understanding
that's where it
different cultures.
starts, right?
Yeah, that's
Yes.
where it
So
starts.
understanding where everyone is coming from and what is their verse into this bigger, let's say, social soul or social change that we want to see in the world.
Yeah, yeah, and we also actually ended up with talking about a few products that would be amazing to eat, like the chicken nuggets, the vegan chicken nuggets, which were, I mean, for a lot of parents, kids just love chicken nuggets, so it's great
Yes.
to have a chicken nugget that is plant based, so you can have your cake and eat it too, so to speak.
Yeah. We also discussed the challenge of parents, right? To bring the
Yeah,
kids along, and you don't want to just be sitting there and you're the only one eating, and you're already the one who was doing the cooking. So we also discussed how you actually bring, just another generation along on this journey. Yes, and
right.
the nuggets is a great example.
Yeah.
Mm.
Thank you. Christoph, what in the conversation with Fairtrade, we kind of had a different word for empathy, which you brought in, and that was what you said is that the business model of Fairtrade actually makes it possible for us to show kindness to strangers, something we aren't evolved for. Can you maybe explain that a bit more and what you tried to what you were trying to convey with that idea?
Yeah. Well, first of all, our conversation was long because we needed 2 episodes to get this conversation going. Um, but yeah, that's we must basically think of um, our capacity to care for people close to us, to care for our direct environment, is actually quite easy. Uh, but to care for people on the other side of the world, which are total strangers, that's damn difficult. You know, we are not humanly, we tend to meet strangers with peers rather than with kindness. But we've built as humanity great reasoning and relational capacities to actually also welcome strangers, care for strangers. And I think fair trade has done a phenomenal job to help in that. And but the trap for them, and that's where empathy comes into it. You know, they've built a great productivity capacity. Business tends to be good at productivity, you know, or even because they focus on trade, a transactional capacity. But the true strength lies in growing humanity's relational capacity to unlock more abundance and operate with a logic of abundance. And I think where they can go even a step further is to feed a true participative culture instead of just a supply chain culture. So how can everyone be part of the story? And they're doing a really great job. You know, Nicola is very clear. I'm not here to judge big companies. They're my clients. And we must see farmers not as a producer, but people who are working very hard to improve their livelihoods. And we should give them a fair price so we don't have to give it to them, but they can actually pay for it. So that's also a dignity narrative in it. So, you know, who are we to judge, you know, them on what type of investment they should make for their community? They should be able to do that for themselves by paying them properly. So this was for me a great shift from building a global relational capacity, not only a transactional and productivity capacity. So fabulous, worth the listen. Listen to both, please.
Yeah, so the conversation was with Fairtrade was with Molly Harris Olsen, Nicolas Lambert, Christophe Fauquier, and myself asking the questions, and it took us about I think hour and a half, and we actually wanted to cut that down to at least an hour, max an hour, but we kind of find out there's nothing we can cut from this without detracting from the content of what is being said. I mean, Molly is just a canon of amazing ideas and amazing stories. Nicolas Lambert, Christophe as well. Um, um, so that one is a two-part podcast, but one conversation, and you can listen to it. It's called "The Race to the Bottom," because also one of the things that because we just have a global transactional infrastructure, so to speak, there's a race to the bottom that happens because everybody wants to have the cheapest transactions, and one of the easiest ways to lower the price of your transaction is to lower the dignity of the people in the supply chain who have less power than yourself. So yeah, we actually have some time left. That's great. I wanna take a moment to tell everyone where they can listen to the podcasts. They are available on SoundCloud and on Spotify. They will be on the Innate Motion website. The links will be posted on LinkedIn, but you can also just go on Spotify and search for Business in the Age of Empathy, or search for Innate Motion, and you'll find the first 4 episodes uploaded. And I hope and I think there will be more to come, but we'll just leave that at right now. Those 4 are more than enough for the time being to listen to soak in, and maybe learn more about anything. We have 5 minutes left, guys. What kind of closing statements do we want to make, or remarks do we have? Chris.
I would give people back 5 minutes of their lives. Let them fully go into a moment of peace and reflection, and have a wonderful cup of tea.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Beautiful.
I love that. Before we do that, I'd have one final request, because I feel it's about collective conversations. So after you've listened to the podcast, I'd love to hear your voice, your opinion, what resonated, what did not resonate, because we need to hear everyone if we want to push the needle further in creating a regenerative economy.
That's a great request. Thank you. Thank you all for listening, for taking the time to be present here. And thank you 3 as well for making a time in your busy schedules. And that's it for now. Enjoy your 4 minutes of silence.
Thank you, Shad.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ciao. Ciao.
Bye bye.